Hello and welcome to the program. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held a 14-hour-long press conference last week. The president held forth on subjects such as the war in eastern Ukraine, relations with Russia, and his phone call with US President Donald Trump that has led to a Washington impeachment probe. To talk more about the international reaction to President Zelensky's press conference, we welcome to our studio today Volodymyr Khandogiy. He's president of Ukrainian Foreign Policy Association. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So first point, during the 14 hours long press conference, Zelensky has insisted he wasn't aware of Donald Trump's decision to withhold military aid before their now infamous 25th of July phone call. He said, quote, "There was no blackmail. I had no idea the military aid was held up." What's your stance on that?
Well, I tend to believe the president. I mean, if he says that he didn't know about that, well, we take it for granted. Because I cannot assume that had he known that, he would have been a little bit different in his approach. And that tells me another story, that maybe the president is operating in a kind of a vacuum and not all the information is being given to him, and that is bad. I mean, we remember time when our presidents were sort of very distant from real politics, from the situation on the ground. So I think that the surrounding of the president, the administration, or rather the office, they should be more forthcoming in bringing to the president first-hand information. So, that's, well, in general, he should have known that. He should have known that, because everybody knew that from the newspapers.
So you're saying it's a lack of good advising, good advisors, or just a lack of knowledge and
I mean, it's both,
policy?
Because the president is a very busy man, of course, and there is a lot of information streaming in. So that's the point of and the task for the people that are around him to actually tell him everything that is going on. Plus, during that press conference, he was asked, if I remember well, that same question: on which basis? What do you read? What do you know about what's going on in the world? And he said that he reads a lot of different,
sources.
From the social media, from newspapers, from everywhere. And plus, he said that his advisors are bringing him information. So I think they should work out on this more closely. So presidents should be very much tuned to what is going on in the world.
Now, this is quite interesting, this format of the press marathon itself. What's your? Do you think it's an efficient format? Do you think, because he also fell under criticism recently, especially with Mrs. Mendel's, let's say, aggressive behavior towards journalists, to say the least.
Yeah.
To say the least.
She's a lady.
Well, no, indeed, but like we saw a certain lack of openness, let's say, towards journalism and towards journalists in his team. Do you think this press marathon was a way to, undermine these critics?
You know, honestly, I have mixed feelings about this press conference. On one hand, it was the right decision of the president to hold that conference with the media, because for some time he was accused of being sort of a little bit far from the press, and his own collaborators repeated on several occasions that they do not need press, they can communicate with the people without intermediaries, and so on and so forth. So the president was kind of under the pressure, or under even accusations that he is hiding, that he is not really is in a position to talk to the press due to the lack of knowledge on various issues. So what he did was right, and but on the other hand, we have to talk about the contents of the press conference and whether or not it was convenient for the viewers, this kind of a format. My impression is that it was the situation is that the lack of concrete topics, the lack of concrete messages that people were expected of him, it's a bad, or rather the lack side of this press conference. But what we ask ourselves, what do we remember from this conference? Do we remember any concrete message as far as the situation in the Donbass is concerned? Do we know now exactly what will happen with the law on the land trade or something like that? I don't think we do have clearer position or clearer understanding after the press conference of what was going on. But we will remember, of course, that that is the longest ever press conference in the world, and it deserves to be included into the World Book of Records, Guinness. And of course, 500 questions were asked, 300 journalists. So we will remember some of these technical issues, rather than we should have remembered more on the content of what's going on in Ukraine. And that is why I have such mixed feelings. But I would like to reiterate once again that the decision was right. Maybe we will have another opportunities to listen to the president. Now he's open. We all know he's not hiding, and he deserved the recognition for being able to talk to journalists for so many hours. Plus, of course, I would like to mention one other thing. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but the quality of the questions remains to be more, to be better, because some questions were not to the level of the president, of course, and that is. And that goes for the journalists.
Now, that's interesting, because we saw some American journalists coming, of course, about asking questions, of course, about the Trump Ukraine call, and so it looked like every journalist had its own, let's say, some sort of agenda there.
And some of the journalists, they didn't know that those questions were already asked.
Yes.
And that was a kind of a repetition. That's not really good. But on the other hand, each journalist got his answer. Good or bad, but the question was asked, and the answer was given to the journalist, and that's a positive sign.
Now, one of the points which was supposed to be, let's say, clarified or highlighted was the Steinmeier formula. Do you think that the outcome of the answers of President Zelensky and what's going to happen now, do you think he received the message when he saw all these people on Maidan, saying no capitulation, that he understood this message really, or it's just communication when he says, when he's basically, reassuring people?
Well, that's exactly what I was saying, that did we, or rather, do we understand better the situation, or do we understand now better the formula, Steinmeier formula, after the press conference? I don't think so. And plus the reaction of the public tells you that many people listened to the press conference, but apparently they were not convinced that there is nothing wrong with the accepting of the Steinmeier formula. And so I think it's not enough for any given press conference to turn the sort of feelings of the public upside down. I mean, we all need to work more intensely with the public to explain on every possible platforms, on every possible occasion, to explain the issue of the Steinmeier formula in a bigger context, not just whether we accept or we do not accept Steinmeier formula. How does it fill into the overall solution of the situation in the Donbass? So I think we still need to work on that, especially the administration of the president, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have to, the expert community. But, I mean, for the lack of time, we don't have enough time to go deep into the situation. But my personal opinion is that I don't think that the Steinmeier formula, if accepted overall, even if it's signed, will bring us closer to the peace.
Why would you say that?
Because it's a much more complicated issue, and we have to work on the assumption: what is the ultimate goal of Russian Federation in this situation? Whether or not Russia will ever agree on the, for instance, independent Ukraine, without the division inside the country, without federalization, whether or not Russia will agree on the independent course towards NATO, European Union. So I think that the goal which Russia set in front of herself tells us that even the formula or any other, the Minsk format, the Minsk agreements will not really bring peace to this part of Ukraine on the conditions, I mean, on the understanding of Ukraine.
Now, another theme, another topic was the fact of raising the issue of Crimea during the Normandy format. What's your stance on that? Is it viable? Is it realistic?
I mean, the president is under pressure again. That on several occasions there were, criticism that he does not really raise the issue. So he thought maybe it would be opportune time for him to raise the issue during the Normandy format. Although I personally, as an expert, and many expert community understand that Russia will never agree in the first place to talk about this issue within the Normandy format, whether we like it or not. And I think even that insisting on bringing this issue to the Normandy format will jeopardize the meeting itself. So I'll be very cautious about that. Of course, he may speak up whatever the president would like to talk about. But honestly, in my opinion, the solution to the issue of Crimea lies more within the judicial framework rather than within the political. We need to employ, possibilities of the international judicial system, of International Court of Justice, United Nations, other venues where we can talk about the illegal annexation of Crimea. But within the Normandy format, we still have to, although I don't like it, I think it's not sufficient to have only 4 countries dealing with this such a complex situation which we have in the Donbass. But even if you raise that issue there, it will not be successful. So we will even kind of distract attention from the necessity to resolve and to find ways and means how to resolve the situation in the Donbass.
So for you, it would be counterproductive, basically?
In a way, yes.
Now, I just want to focus a little bit on the relations between the US and Ukraine. Since the Trump-Zelensky's conversation, now Trump is under an impeachment probe. Ukraine is, despite itself, in the middle, embroidered in this scandal, despite willing to be it. What's the best way for Ukraine and for Mr. Zelensky to get out of this scandal, without having too much damage and damaging too much the relations between Ukraine and the US?
As they say, damage has been already done. So we need to get out of this situation without casualties, I would say. But, well, first of all, we have to be very clear about the content. We have to be very clear that Ukraine will never interfere into the internal affairs of the United States in terms of the judicial procedures that are going on, in terms of the electoral process and so on and so forth. And it should be very clear that Ukraine will not do anything that will jeopardize these processes. On the other hand, we will have to also be very clear that we are ready to cooperate within the framework of the existing legal system in both countries. There are ways and means. There is an agreement between Ukraine and the United States on the legal support, and through those channels we can provide any relevant information that is needed. We have to be very clear that we are not, we don't want to be involved in the, so as we say, under carpet movements and trying to meet with private persons, and there are official channels that we have to employ. So, and plus, of course, even bad advertising is a good.
There's no such thing as bad publicity,
because we need to. Ukraine is on the in the newspapers, in the mass media today. You open up the press and listen to any channel, and you will hear about Ukraine. Of course, in a bad context, but we have to turn this situation for our good. We have to use this situation when Ukraine is spoken about, providing and promoting our own agenda. We have to tell the people that Ukraine is the civilized country. We are ready to cooperate and see what happens. But certainly, this is not the best situation I would wish Ukraine will have.
Well, this is a situation we will closely follow. Thank you very much for coming in our studio today to highlight US-Ukrainian relations and, of course, this press marathon. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today.
Thank you.
That was Volodymyr Khandogiy. He's president of Ukrainian Foreign Policy Association. Thank you for watching the program. Stay tuned for the rest.